Welcome to Undrafted Hockey Fan. I am Brad. Today we're going to be going over some NHL news. Make sure if you're joining me on YouTube or on podcast, make sure if you're liking this content, let me know. Put down a nice like, put down a comment down below. If you're on Apple again or Spotify, make sure to hit the stars aspect and everything. So I appreciate it. So let's just jump right into some NHL news. I forgot to cover this in our last NHL video, but we forgot that the St. Louis Blues actually traded Scott Perunovich to the New York Islanders. He was making $1.15 million. 26-year-old D for a fifth-round pick in 2026. Only played 24 games this season at the time of the trade, and he's got 6 points. Kind of a guy that just was underutilized. I think it was similar to the Jake Wallman deal that the Detroit Red Wings had. A guy just when you look at the St. Louis Blues defense, I mean, they got some pretty good defensemen on that D line. And so you have to consider that there wasn't a lot of opportunity for this 26-year-old when you have guys like Justin Falk, Colton Parayko, Philip Broberg, Cam Fowler. Those are your top four right there. So you're stuck on a third pair. You're stuck in the third pair. So this guy wasn't getting a lot of time. And so this guy ended up getting moved. I mean, if we look at what he's done before in his career, I mean, he's also 5'10". He's a second-round pick, right? Just looking for more opportunity. And I think with the Islanders, he might end up getting more of that opportunity. Looking back, let's see when he was drafted. His 20. In university, he spent up 40 points in 34 games in 1920 season. I mean, so this guy can absolutely rip it as a defenseman, over a point per game. So I think it's just more of that. There's just a lot of a lack of movement in that. I think that I'm surprised he didn't request a trade sooner, because as a 26-year-old, like, hey, he's like, I need to make more money because I need to show that I actually have some good stuff to prove. And so Scott Perunovich is moving, and you're now a New York Islander. Move on to the next couple pieces of business. All right, we got talking about the Islanders. Marcus Hogberg is expected to miss 3 weeks with an upper body injury. If we're looking at the New York Islanders, they are absolutely hurting on the goaltending side. So you have Ilya Sorokin again, who's healthy, but you have Semyon Varlamov, who has been injured for a while. Now their backup goalie. Then they have their third goalie, Marcus Hogberg, a 30-year-old, is now injured. So they bring up Jacob Scarab. This gentleman was a third-round draft pick in 2018. He's played one game so far. He's got a 5.29 goals against and an 0.84 save percentage. Bummer for this guy. Mostly played in the AHL as of recent with the Bridgeport Islanders. He's been under a 900, so not exactly what you want to see out of this guy. But again, it's your fourth goalie, right? You don't expect to have to touch your fourth goalie. So hopefully he's only 25, so hopefully he can turn around and everything. He's 6'3", so he's a good size goalie and everything. And he needs a new contract next year. And he, according to this, he says he's the number one goalie. He is absolutely not the number one goalie right now, but probably just because he just played for him and everything. But that is just something to consider when you're looking at the Islanders. Like, that's tough. That's tough sledding right there. So I'm going on some NHL news. Mitch Marner may be thinking about getting that. Supposedly, according to the Athletic, Mitch Marner is probably going to go for a $14 million a year deal. Of course, because that's what Leon Draisaitl got. And that's kind of where, I mean, I understand why. I think he should try and go for it. I think he should try and go for it. Would you say he's as good as a Leon Draisaitl? Absolutely not. No. I in my opinion, I think he's going to ask for 14. I think they're going to end up settling around between 13 and 13.5. I think it's going to be more like 13.25. Because Austin already took 13.25 as well. So if we're looking at comparatively, Mitch Marner is a very good player. Absolutely. But goals are more important than assists. Let's be frank here. Okay. So if we're looking at Austin, he took the 13.25. I could see if you're going to do an 8-year deal, I mean, I could see him doing maybe a 13.5, maybe a 14. But now that these cap protections have come out and you're seeing a huge jump in the cap, I mean, I could absolutely see him doing a $14 million deal. So that is my opinion. I think I'm going to be surprised. I think he's a very, very talented player. If we're looking at what he's doing this year so far, let me pull it up real quick. Mitch Marner is actually the fourth most expensive guy on the Maple Leafs, which is kind of crazy because he's actually cheaper than Tavares, who will be getting a discount, right? Consider that Tavares is making $11 million right now. If he signs a 3-year deal at like $7 million, you're saving $4 million right there. Now you take that. For 3 of the $4 million goes to Mitch Marner. Boom, right there, you're kind of set. So, and right now he is currently on a talking about his pace right now. He's on a 108 point pace. I mean, that's a pretty solid player. I mean, someone like Matt Tkachuk got like 10 or 10 and a half, right? I mean, you're around 10, right? But again, you're in New York or you're in Florida, so you get to keep more of that. So he was going to make at least $1 million or $1 million more. Mind you, this is all before the cap jump. So I wouldn't be surprised if the $14 million absolutely is going to be asking. So we will see if they end up doing it. I think he ends up resigning with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's just in my opinion. So looks like there's a couple offer sheets of guys that are potentially available, right? You're thinking of like a Matthew Knies, a Marco Rossi, a Wyatt Johnston. Again, let's actually go to a Matthew Knies because I think I think he might be an RFA already. Yeah, he's an RFA right now. So honestly, guys could actually offer him an offer sheet like right now. So this is why it's important for the Leafs to determine whether they want to keep him or not. Again, Wyatt Johnston, of course, is a huge asset for the Dallas Stars. He was a former first-round draft pick, right? So you're looking at a guy that is, he's been pretty pinnacle for the team. I think he's been playing center on the first line. Ruby hits, sorry. Wyatt Johnston playing third line center. But again, you have guys like Matt Duchene's 34 years old. He's not going to be there the whole time, right? Can Wyatt Johnston be that second line center because now you have like Tyler Seguin's been playing third. He's been playing on the wing this whole time. So I can absolutely see Wyatt Johnston doing that. Marco Rossi, I know one of the hesitations with Minnesota is that they're talking about Marco Rossi. There is some concerns about him in the sense that I'm pretty sure he's small. I think that was one of the big concerns. Yeah, he's 5'9", right? So you're looking at a 23-year-old center, 5'9", which is that's mid-small, right? Think Connor Bedard's 5'11", Crosby's 5'11" as well. So these are small guys. 5'9" is pretty small, and you're like, okay, what is the guy's putting up 46 points in 53 games this year. So he's playing at like a top 6 center position anyway, so top 2. So like if you had him as a second line center, if we look at what do they have on their depth? So for the depth chart, look at the Minnesota Wild right now for their center depth. You have Joel Eriksson at 28 years old, so he's gonna be there for a bit too. He's got 4 more years left on his deal. Then you have Mark Ross playing that second line center. Frederick Gaudreau. Rossi's kind of your second line center. We have Marcus Johansson who could play center, but again, he's 33. So you have to look at the long-term bet of Marco Rossi. And mind you, he's a 9th overall draft pick. If you're giving this guy, again, let's say it's Lucas Raymond money, right? Around $8 million for 8 years. I think they absolutely take. I think Minnesota Wild is something they would absolutely take. But again, he's put up a great year this year. So I don't know. I'm curious. Let me know what your thoughts are. Would you give Marco Rossi, like I said, a 5'9" center? So we'll see. But there is some talk about Evgeni Malkin and Kris Letang's trade value can't be that high at this moment. Let's go over where they're at because to me, I think just the name alone is going to get you a good amount of hype, right? I would say the trade value is the only thing is that they have no movement clauses. I think they have full blown no movement clauses. We're looking at Kris Letang and Evgeni Malkin. Very sure they have full blown no movement clauses. So Evgeni Malkin is currently injured. It looks like he's on injury reserve. Yeah, so his value for sure down. But he's put up 34 points in 47 games. So he's at like 3 points every 4 games. That's not terrible. That's not a terrible pace at all. And then looking at Kris Letang, 20 points in 47 games. Not as great. Erik Karlsson's playing most of the PP1 with 35 points in 54 games. So both at $6.1 million as well. So I don't disagree. I think Kris Letang at 37 years old at 6.1, I think he's potentially a buyout candidate. I don't know. Do you keep him? Is it worth it? Is it 6.1 worth it for him? Evgeni Malkin his deal is up next year, so that's something to consider. Is that he is up next year, so maybe he wants to be. I don't think he definitely doesn't want to be traded. He's 37 as well, but there's definitely room for. Imagine getting Evgeni Malkin at half retained on your third line for $3 million. I wouldn't mind that, right? So, you can probably, it's not gonna be high, but I'd pay a second round pick for Evgeni Malkin for this year and next year. But again, he has to waive his no movement clause. So we're looking at what they got for protection and everything. So you got where are you at? Evgeni Malkin, full blown no movement clauses this year and next year. So that's tough. That's tough to swallow. Kris Letang's got a full no movement clause this year and next year. And then in 26-27, he has a 10-team trade list. So he would have 10 teams that he would choose that he wants to be traded to. So that's tough. That's absolutely, it is really tough. These are deals that also Kyle Dubas did not sign. So this is something that the Brian or the Rutherford area where you're like, dude, you really kind of left these guys high and dry. I understand they're icons, but you're really leaving high and dry with these into these issues, these what's it called? These like bad contracts. So talking about the Leafs center options. They're looking for 3 different center options. There were 4, but there's Ryan O'Reilly, Brock Nelson, Scott Laughton, and it used to be Yanni Gourde, but Yanni Gourde is out for I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks. I think maybe it's like 5 to 6 weeks. So he will be injured during the trade deadline. So I'm curious on what they'll be able to get back for, if someone's going to trade for him, right? What would they trade for him? I mean, I think Yanni Gourde is a good third line center. If you get him at like half retained, if you send over like a third or second round pick because he's injured. So like you don't know what you're going to be getting if you do trade for him now. So you probably want more of the guarantee with like a Ryan O'Reilly, a Brock Nelson, or Scott Laughton. Mind you, Ryan O'Reilly is the one that is been told he's got years left on his contract. And one of the things that Nashville was talking about with Barry Trotz, I could not think of his name. With Barry Trotz is that Ryan O'Reilly has no trade protection. He's got this year and the next 2 years after that. So you get him if you do trade him. Barry Trotz said that if you do trade him, we're going to assume he has a full-blown no movement clause, even though he doesn't, which is kind of, you're doing right with the player, but at the same time, you're like, this is a business, right? So if someone's like, hey, we'll give you a first round pick for Ryan O'Reilly, you're like, done. That's how it should be. But we'll see. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly has been a great center for them as well. I think he's a good deal. I think it's a very cheap deal, especially with him being only like $4.5 million. If you're looking at a couple other players like Scott Laughton on the Philadelphia Flyers, let me pull it up real quick. Continuing on with like Brock Nelson or someone like him, like Brock Nelson is a guy who makes $6 million. So you have the honors retain on that. And he's actually the most productive of these guys. Looking at it right now, I think Ryan O'Reilly only has 29 points in 48 games, so he's putting up 0.6 points per game, which is good. Brock Nelson is putting up 0.62, so he's higher productive, but a higher cap hit. And again, with Ryan O'Reilly, you get him for longer, so hopefully he can stay there and be your third line center. But you have to consider you just continue to pay him those 2 years after that, and that cap hit definitely you have to consider that, right? Scott Laughton is again the other one, about a half point per game player from the Philadelphia Flyers. And again, another guy that you get for this year and next year. He's 30 years old right now. He only makes $3 million a year. So that's something that you have to consider, is that you may be able to get Scott Laughton for cheaper because he's only making $3 million a year. So Philadelphia wouldn't have to retain, as opposed to like a Brock Nelson where you'd have to retain, right? You are getting a little bit more production, but you'd also have Scott Laughton for this year and next year, right? So if you can get him retained, that would be sweet. Maybe you get him for like a second round draft pick. Like there's a lot of good options when it comes to that third line center position. So Brandon Saad actually signs with the Vegas Golden Knights. I think we talked about him last time as well. Looks like New Jersey has interesting Kyle Palmieri. I'm curious, what is Kyle Palmieri doing these days? I mean, he's been a very productive player in the NHL at 34 years old. Making $5 million a year at 34 points in 52 games. Okay, so similar to like what the Brock Nelson is talking about, and that, I mean, that's a good winger that I think the Devils could use. I think they saw issues with trying to make Andre Palat work out, and it's kind of having a little bit of struggles there. So, Brant Clark is an interesting character. We saw him getting scratched recently, and I'm curious on, because you have a Drew Doughty, you have they have a Brant Clark. Who else do they have? They have another dynamic defenseman. I can't think of his name. Is it Spencer something? I think Jordan Spence. Yeah. So you have guys like Jordan Spence. You have a guy like Brant Clark. Like these guys are your next leaders on the defense, especially with a guy like Drew Doughty. Like he's getting old. Let's be honest. Drew Doughty is 34 years old. He's got this year and then 2 years after that. But again, he's been injured all year, right? So Brant Clark really picked up the pace with 24 points in 48 games, highly sheltered. But again, he's 21 years old, as expected. What you see with guys that are just a little more like, hey, you have to consider like Like D just take a little bit longer to develop. And again, it's his I think it's his first full year, his first actual full year in the NHL. So when you consider that, again, I know he's an 8th overall pick, but yeah, he played 9 games in 22-23, 16 games last year. And then again, this is his first full year in the NHL. It just takes time to get up to that NHL pace. And again, understanding that that's how these developments go. Again, he's 21 years old. Okay. He's not going to be winning the Calder or anything, but he's absolutely producing. So I'm not mad about that at all. So, all right. So moving on to the next piece of information. There's a little bit of interest around Jamie Oleksiak as well. So what do you want to see from Jamie Oleksiak? Well, like who is Jamie Oleksiak as well? So if we look at who he is, he's a forward. Pulling him up real quick. Where you at, Oleksiak? Oh, no, he's a defenseman. Sorry, I thought he was a defenseman. He does have a modified 16 team no trade list. So, but he's 32 years old. So if you're looking for a defenseman, he's putting up about a point every 4 games again. But you're looking at what you're getting in Oleksiak is you're getting a big, solid defenseman. Mind you, he's 6'7", 256 pounds. So when you're getting a guy like that, you're getting for this year and next year as well. Like that's a bargain. So you can get him again for like a second, third round pick. I think probably a second round pick because you're getting him for this year and next year. It is $6.4 million. So maybe I think for a second round pick, if you had the Seattle Kraken retain on that, maybe you get him. And who else do they got as a UFA that they even want to trade? Like if you let's say if there was some talks with Toronto is using an example. Let's say you want to get Brandon Tanev and Oleksiak half retained. I would be willing to send out a first round pick for that because Tanev's a UFA. And again, he looks like you have him for this year and next year at half retained, kind of like some of the Jake McCabe situation. I think that'd be huge, right? Tanev does have a 10-team no trade list, which is usually the 7 Canadian teams and the 3 California teams usually based on taxes. So that is something to consider there as well. So I don't know if they'd be able to trade for him. So we would see. So let's go on our next bit of news. Looks like Elias Pettersson is off the market currently for a trade block for now, but it could return this offseason if he continues to struggle. Mind you, the reason that Pettersson was in trade talks is that he has no trade protection at all right now, so he can be traded to any team. As soon as the summer hits and July 1st hits, or whenever the cutoff date is for the next year, right, for the next season, that's when he's a full-blown no trade clause, so no movement clause. So he has to decide whether he gets to decide where he wants to be traded to. And it's very difficult to trade a 7-year deal, 7 years left, 7-year deal at $11.5 million when he's like, I want to go to Buffalo or I want to go to Florida, right? And he only willing to wait for Florida, let's say. It'd be really difficult to do because it's a whole lot of cap take on that. A lot of teams have to make a ton of moves to be able to make room for this cap. So what they're looking to do is they say, hey, do we want to keep him long term? And we saw this with the PLD trade, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, right? He signs in Winnipeg, and it's a sign-in trade, right? He signs in Winnipeg, immediately traded to the LA Kings. And what happened is that he was having a bad year. It was his first bad year in the LA Kings system, and he was just not looking well, right? So about 2-3 days before his full-blown no movement clause trade kicked in, he was traded from LA to Washington for Darcy Kemper. And now he's thriving in Washington, which is huge, right? So right now we're seeing because PD signed his deal last year, his 8-year deal last year, again, at $11.5 million cap hit, which is huge. But again, that'll be cheaper as the cap goes up, right? Because it's not going to be as big a percentage on the cap. And so, but you have to decide whether you really want to double down on this guy, if you really want to keep him. And if the assets you get back, I know the Vancouver Canucks are looking, I mean, they already traded Miller away, right? They picked up Marcus Pettersson, who they're looking to extend. They picked up Drew O'Connor with the first round pick. They got a couple of pieces here and there. Philip Cheadle as well. Like, is Philip Cheadle now going to be your first line center? He's currently your second line center, taking over JT Miller's spot. But with Elias Pettersson, you have to consider, is he going to be the guy? So he really has to show up and show out for the rest of the season. Now he doesn't have the stressor of a JT Miller on his team, right? And if Brock Besser's another guy, I honestly think that they end up trading him. If they can get a good player back in return, I think that would be huge for them to give like a small pick and like I don't know, some sort of, I don't know who it would be, right? But that's something that you consider, like when you get, I think they want to sign Brock Besser, but Brock Besser and JT Miller were like pretty good buddies. So I think Besser would probably be pretty upset with Vancouver Canucks that, hey, you traded away my buddy. Like I enjoyed playing with them. And maybe, dude, what if Brock Besser signed with the New York Rangers? That would be so stupid. I could absolutely see it happen though, but we'll see. But that is someone to consider. Like, so we will see if Elias Anderson talks end up ramping up. I know I'm a Red Wings fan, so I'm like, man, like it would be great to see him really play with them. So looks like William Karlsson had an injury and is now being pulled off of the Sweden's Four Nations face-off tournament, and is now being replaced by Rickard Rakell. Rickard Rakell has 45 points, 53 games with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So again, nice little solid piece of business right there. Again, you're bringing a guy that's a solid middle six guy. I think it's going to work out really well for the Sweden team. So, but we're starting to see injuries pile up, right? We already saw Pietrangelo pull out. We saw Heiskanen not being able to do it. Who is it? Who's the guy on? I can't think of Finland. Jani Hakanpää with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's not going there. So Finland's taking a lot of huge hits. So it's kind of a bummer. So the Senators, they had this sick goalie, Leevi Meriläinen, who at 22 years old put up an 8-3-1 with his record with Ottawa, had a .925 save percentage and a 5.5 goals saved above expected. So this guy was absolutely stealing the show as a rookie, right? And I think that's phenomenal. I love this. I love that we get to see that. Now we're having, I have Anton Forsberg and Ullmark back fully in the lineup. So to me, I think that they got a bright future with this kid. I think that's phenomenal. And so yeah, you have Sogard as well. So where is Sogard? How is he doing? They traded Jonas Korpisalo as well. If you look at Mad Sogard, he's down in the AHL, I believe. He's only played 2 games with the Ottawa Senators this year. But right now he's in the AHL, played 8 games. His numbers are not looking too good right now. But again, goalies are weird, man. You can get a hot goalie. Mind you, Matt Sogard is 6'7". That is phenomenal. He's 6'7". Like it's hard to find like goalies that big. Like you need to do a ton of work with them, but it's absolutely worth it if you can get him going, because like he's 6'7". Like that's how that whole thing works. Like 6'7" is a monster kid there. So how tall is Levy? Levy is 6'3". Again, it's just all about production and everything. Again, Levy Meriläinen is clearly doing really well. So one of the other dramas we're seeing right now is that there's some booing. So we've seen some booing with the during the national anthem of the during Ottawa's game. We saw it during Montreal's game as well. And so this is a response to President Trump's tariffs on Canada, but which have, as of today, been paused. There was some talks with Trudeau and President Trump. And so we're seeing that whether you like him or not, like this is something that people are speaking, right? Canadians are feeling that that Trump is trying to affect their livelihood as do some Americans, right? And so there's some booing, whether you agree or disagree. It's a reality of the situation. And so we're seeing a little bit of conflict between, as a person in Detroit who is a big fan of Canada, literally live like 20 minutes away. Big fan, but again, there is a bit of discrepancy or discomfort in knowing that there's some tension now around this, and that a lot of my energy in Detroit comes from Canada. It's a little bit daunting, but hopefully everything gets ironed out. Again, it is paused for right now, thankfully. And so we'll see how this ends up working out. But again, the Canadians are absolutely expressing their displeasure with President Trump, and it's a little bit wild. It's a wild world we're living in. So anyways, we're gonna hit a quick break real quick, and then we'll touch back and get up a little more news, and then we'll wrap the show up. So stay tuned. Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Now, again, if you're looking at a contender like maybe the Chiefs or the Bills, I mean, you could bet them to go all the way. Or if you're just a Chiefs hater, let's say, you can bet against them up until the Super Bowl, and it's so great. So make sure to get on the action at DraftKings. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boo Hill Casino Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. And we are back. And so let's jump into a little more news. Looks like Sabres are still going to absolutely pursue Elias Pettersson. Again, why wouldn't you? You're looking at number one center. And I think Dylan Cousins is a huge asset that could end up going back, as we talked about previously. So I think that is something that we can absolutely see happening again. I know the Detroit Red Wings, who I cheer for, should absolutely be going for an Elias Pettersson, because they signed Seider and Raymond to phenomenal contracts, as well as Larkin, all around $8 million, within the $8 million range. So if you can bring in Elias Pettersson, that's why you save money on these caps for these guys that you bring up in your draft, because you can bring in guys like Elias Pettersson. That'd be huge. So there's supposedly, according to there's the Athletic, there's a 70% chance that Nikolai Ehlers will not be a Winnipeg Jet next season. I called this, by the way. I was like, no way. Like, I just think there was just too much contention previously. There's a bit of frustrations with playing time with the previous coach. Like, there's been it's been a little jarring, and I imagine he wants to get back. And I mean, he's from Sweden, right? Sweden, Denmark. So I imagine he wants to try and explore the market. He's got 47 points in 45 games. To me, if he continues at a point per game player, I mean, let's look at his numbers. He's making $6 million a year right now. He's having his best season. He's on track to his best season ever, but he's hit the point per game, almost hit the point per game before. So to me, I think for a solid 60-point guy, I mean, this guy can get an easy 7x7. And he's making $6 million a year with the cap up. He's probably going to get 7 years, $8 million deal, because the cap's going up. So I mean, I can understand why he wants to explore the open market, because hey, why not? Why wouldn't you? Right? Why not? So also talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins, there's a lot of interest in, according to Dave Pagnotta, Rickard Rakell and Michael Bunting, but the Pittsburgh Penguins are hesitant to move them. Why? Bunting is a second line center with half point per game player. Cool. But if you can get good value for him, why wouldn't you? And then talking about Rickard Rakell, again, the guy we just talked about, going to Sweden, he's 31 years old, right? He's doing well this year, 45 points, 53 games. But again, you want to be able to move these guys because they're getting older. You need to get younger, right? We already saw them pick up Danton Heinen. This year, just look at this year, what they've done, right? They got Imama Bocagino. They got Danton Heinen from the Vancouver Canucks. They got Cody Glass from the Nashville Predators. They got Philip Tomasino from the Nashville Predators as well. They got Vincent Desharnais. They moved out Marcus Pettersson. So these guys they got Pierre-Olivier Joseph from the St. Louis Blues. These guys, they're trying to make some moves because they need to get younger. They need to have some guys around Sidney Crosby to be able to push him further, right? Some of these guys are not working out, right? Again, Evgeni Malkin, he's hurt, right? So now you move Cody Glass up to that second line center. Can he produce at that rate? I don't know, but he's 25 years. He'll be 25 years old. You got to try these guys out now so that you can decide if you want to keep them or not. So, I mean, I think you move them. I think Rickard Rakell is a great player, but I think you move them. You get the assets. You flip the assets. You do it. What Vancouver just did, right? They got a first round pick back for JT Miller. They didn't take it, flip it to Pittsburgh Penguins, and get Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, right? So you're getting guys that can be here for the long term and that are younger, right? So and can still produce. So you're basically, I mean, it's a call for Moneyball. You're basically building guys in the aggregate, right? Is Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor going to replace JT Miller? Absolutely not. But you moved off some bad contracts. You signed this year in Danton Heinen and Desharnais, Vancouver Canucks, and you also got players back as well. that are useful. So you're raising the floor, you're lowering your ceiling, but you're raising the floor still of what a capable team you can be. So I think that may make the most sense. Just get the value you can for him if you can. So I mean, even if you have to retain. So Justin Falk and Ryan Suter are the Blues' most likely trade candidates at the deadline. I talked about this, about trading Justin Falk. It was last year, and I got so much hate for saying, hey, you need to trade Justin Falk. They're like, well, he's our best guy. And I'm like, no, dude, like get value for him while you can, right? It's nothing against Justin Falk. It's actually trading because he has value. And we're looking at Justin Falk right now. Currently has 19 points in 49 games. So he's under a point per game right now. He's 32 years old. And I talked about this last year when I think he was doing really well. He had 30. No, this maybe was last year, 2 years ago. He had 50 points in 82 games. That last year he had 30 points, 60 games. So like his production is going down. So it's like, why not get the value for him while you can? And again, this guy has this year and 2 years after this. Imagine if you retain on him, right? You might be able to get a first round pick by retaining half on this, right? Because you'd be retaining over $6 million. So like, why wouldn't you? Again, a similar St. Louis is in not the same position as a like Pittsburgh Penguin, but like you have a guy who has value that if you trade him, he's a right-handed defenseman, and so like you trade him, you retain on him, so you can get the assets back because they're in that middle of that retool, right? We saw that they sold hard, right? They sold on O'Reilly, they sold on Tarasenko. They got all these first round picks that are coming up, right? And a lot of young players, right? Zachary Bolduc is now breaking out in their organization, 15 points in 43 games, right? Actually, I'm going to go down to their prospects. They traded for a Zach Dean, right? When they moved out. Who's the guy in Vegas? It wasn't Marchenko. It was, why can't I think of it? I have to look this up now. But yeah, like they pick up Dean because like, hey, like it's a first round pick for Ivan Barbashev. There you go. Well, Ivan Barbashev 1-for-1 for Zach Dean, and it's like, okay, well, he's in the AHL with the Springfield. He's only got 2 points in 6 games, but again, he's young. He's 22 years old. Let him cook, right? You got a Dalibor Dvorsky, right? 29 points, 38 games, coming along nicely. I'm not even 19 years old yet. He's 18 and a half. You got a Otto Stenberg, right? You got 6 points in 26 games. He's in the SHL, again, that's a pro league, right? 18 and a half years old, right? Tanner, going to, where is it? Hunter Skinner, right? You're looking at 12 points in 41 games. There's a couple more here. Let's go. Samuel Johansson. 21 points in 42 games. Again, a defenseman. There's young guys here that are absolutely available that you're like, hey, let's use them. Oh, Adam Juracek. They have Adam Juracek. He's in college, 9 points in 17 games. Where's another one? Quentin Burns, Theo Lindson. Like these guys are all. There's so many young. Jimmy Snuggerud, right? Oh my god, 41 points in 30 games, dude. Like, I mean, there's a ton of young guys coming up. Move out the old guys, so that you can bring in the young guys eventually, right? Make space for them, and so that you can be good long term. I don't see what the issue is here, right? Move out your 30-plus-year-olds. I understand like there's some leadership issues by doing all that, but like you have guys here that can be good leadership, right? You have guys that are going to be like a Jordan Kyrou or Robert Thomas. You have Braden Shenver forever, right? Pavel Buchnevich, like he just signed him to a new deal and everything too. Like there are guys on here that have like long-term tenure, right? You have Colton Parayko, Torrey Krug. He's not here right now. He's injured, right? You just brought in Cam Fowler. Like, there's plenty of veterans. Like, move out. Like, if you can get assets for these guys, absolutely get assets for him. It doesn't make sense. Again, and Ryan Suter, you'll get something for him. He's 40 years old. He's got 8 points in 53 games. Like, you'll get something for him, but like, to me, it's like one of those that, again, Ryan Suter was like a league man. You sign him, you bring him in for this leadership. And then you let him go. Like that's okay. It's not a bad thing, right? JG Pageau on the Islanders is quote unquote the most in-demand player on the Islanders. So if we're looking at we keep going back to the Islanders again. What are they selling or something like that? It's like they weren't great again, but they're starting to really ramp up, which is kind of crazy. He does have a 16 team no trade list, but he's a center. He's a center, 26 points, 49 games. You'd have him for this year and next year too. So understandably, if you can get a first round pick for him, that'd be phenomenal, right? looking at Jake Evans on the Montreal Canadiens, a guy that is not going, they're not going to be signing. They're absolutely trading. Could be going to the Devils, Capitals, Flames, the Maple Leafs, Blue Jackets, all teams that be interested in centers. We just saw the Flames to trade for center in Morgan Frost, but Jake Evans can be a great third line center for them. So I'm totally okay with that. I think you don't offer too much, but it is something that you, I mean, it looks like Frank Saravelli actually said the Capitals are believed to have offered a second round pick for Jake Evans at the draft. So it looks like we're kind of seeing what his value is right now. If we go to where the Montreal Canadiens are, I mean, they're not doing well in the standings though. So that's the one of the big concerns is that you're like, okay, well, he's like with where they're at, they started to fall. If I pull up the standings here, let's go to let's check out the Montreal Canadiens. Where are you at? Because there's this mushy middle that everyone is in. And I know about the mushy middle because I've been watching as a Detroit Red Wings fan who are in a first wild card spot. Honestly, they could actually take over the Ottawa Senators in like a game or two, which would be I'm getting heart palpitations just thinking about it. 53 points, 52 games for the Montreal Canadiens. The gap is starting to widen. So you're seeing at the bottom of the second wildcard spot with the Columbus Blue Jackets, they have 59 points. So if you go on a nice hot streak and a couple of those teams start to falter, the Montreal Canadiens absolutely jump back in. But again, I think they're not going to because that's not part of the plan. The part of the plan is continue to slow step and rebuild and take steps, but not be that wild card spot. I think they're going to start pushing for the wild card spot maybe next year. But again, they're such a young team. They're so dynamic. Like, I think you trade Jake Evans because if you're not going to keep him as a third line center, like get the value you can from him. And a second line center would absolutely be a good little bit. So looks like centers have interest in Brandon Tanev and Ryan Donato. I mean, we just talked about Brandon Tanev. Again, he has a 10-team no trade list. So that is something to consider when you're talking about the he probably won't waive. He'd have to waive. If it is the 10-team no trade list, it's usually 7 Canadian teams and 3 or 3 California teams. So he would have to decide to wait for that one. But then we also have a Ryan Donato. Where are you at, Ryan Donato? Are you injured? Where are you at? It's not showing him right now. Anyways, Ryan Donato is another one that the Ottawa Senators are also interested in. So it also looks like last little bit of information. We did a video on the Dallas Stars trade with Cody, Ceci, and Mikael Granlund, and it looks like the Dallas Stars are hoping to extend both of them, which would be huge for them if they can move off the Dumba contract or the Labushkin contract. That would be huge. And Mikael Granlund would be a solid third line center. But again, you let Wyatt Johnston be a center as well, or maybe you bring Mikael Granlund and make him the fourth line center. I mean, he's great defensive skills, and we've seen the phenomenal offensive skills that he's had this year with the San Jose Sharks. So I'm curious on what they end up doing, but let me know what your thoughts are. Hit like, subscribe. I appreciate it. I love you. Thanks for hanging out and hit up some NHL news. I'll catch you in the next video. Probably end up doing it Wednesday, and probably end up doing a live stream this week as well with the Detroit Red Wings. So let me know what your thoughts are. Hit like, subscribe, and catch you in the next one.